with a sleep problem and you're sleep deprived, will his kind of knee-jerk reaction be to give you some sleeping pills? Because I don't like pills myself.
Right. Well, I don't think so. I think that's one of the reasons why people don't go to their doctor, because they think that they're just going to, push some pills. Let me say this: doctors are under tremendous pressure these days. All kinds of external pressures that we have never had to face before, and so we're faced to see a volume of patients, and so sometimes it's a challenge. I mean, I'm a surgeon, and I don't really deal with sleep issues in what I do on a daily basis, but people come in and complain of, "Doc, I can't sleep," and and that's such a complicated thing.
And that leaves them exhausted.
It leaves them exhausted. And the doc sometimes goes, "Yeah, well, I got the same issue," So it's interesting. But I would say when you go to see your doctor, you need to be prepared. I mean, there's things on the internet that you can get, and like there are actually sleep journals and sleep diaries that you can have that record when you wake up, what seems to be associated with that, how many times a week, what are your medications, what are the things that seem to be
so you can take a report into him,
so that you can have something that your doctor can very quickly and efficiently kind of make some decisions. It may be that your doctor would refer you to maybe a sleep specialist. It's interesting. There's a whole new field of medicine that's emerging in sleep medicine, and you may even need to have a sleep test. So there's a lot that goes into that with insomnia. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to look at the spiritual component. So many times with so many doctors, we forget that man is not only a spiritual being. We focus so much on the physical dynamics, but the fact that mankind is an emotional and spiritual being. And that's what we're really looking into God's Word with in this work.
Yeah, I want to get to that right away. If you just tuned in, my guest is the author of this book. He's a surgeon from Nacogdoches.
That's right. You said it right. Nacogdoches. Yes, ma'am.
And I asked him what kind. He's a general surgeon.
I'm a general surgeon, from the womb to the tomb. We pretty much we do everything, it seems like. So.
Yeah. And one more thing before I got this out of the newspaper, but it's fragmented sleep may impair memory and learning. Is that true?
Absolutely.
The ability to learn new things can be dramatically impaired, says a new study conducted on mice. So these little mice are not learning as they should. And anyway, all the tests they ran, it suggested, as they manipulated the mice, and then they could get a good night's sleep, it was totally different, that the little mouse recognized his little cage where the sleep-deprived mice didn't. And so it is serious if it affects your way to learn, if it affects your memory.
Absolutely.
And that's what this was about.
And there's also studies kind of that correlate with that show that there's an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease in people who don't sleep well. So we know that there's some link there. And part of sleep is, I guess, in a way, kind of like defragging a computer, just letting your mind go to sleep. It's interesting. God could have created us in a lot of different ways. If you look at other creatures in His creation, God could have created us like a bear who hibernates for 3 months, or a bat who sleeps 22 hours out of the day. On the other hand, God could have created us like a giraffe that's always alert and up and sleeps only about 2 hours during a 24-hour period. But God really created us to shut down.
Do you have a theory on why He created humans to sleep about a third of their life? Do you have a theory to address that?
Well, let me say this. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that question. God, I guess, in His unsearchable wisdom, just chose to not tell us that. God doesn't really tell us why we need sleep. It's still kind of clouded in mystery. One thing that and also the Bible doesn't really tell us how much we need to sleep. There's no 11th commandment that says, "Thou shalt sleep, 8 hours a day." I mean, everybody has different physiologic needs. And I think the Bible kind of assumes that when we're tired, we'll sleep. But really what I think God's Word tells us as we look at the Scriptures is more the attitudes that emerge. You mentioned earlier that Jesus was able to sleep serenely in that boat with all the external storm and tempest going on.
And experienced fishermen going nuts.
Right, and they're going crazy, and they're trying to, keep the boat from sinking. And how Jesus was able to do that, and how he was able to nurture that calm heart, But on the other side, if you look at Jesus, kind of the other side of that coin, Jesus, there were times when he sacrificed his sleep, like at the Garden of Gethsemane.
Right.
We think, for example, we think that we would need to have a good night's sleep to be prepared for the challenges that we have, the next day. And it's interesting that the way Jesus lived was just the opposite of that. I mean, he stayed up and he prayed to prepare for the cross. And we see different attitudes that emerge. And I think for us as believers, the challenge is knowing what time it is. There are times when we need to get up and we need to be doing things. There are times when God wakes us up at night to give us a message, to actually speak to us. And so there are times we need to have a responsive heart. And there are times, though, that we should be able to sleep calmly. For sure, one thing that God's Word is very adamant about is that we should not lose sleep over fear, over worry, over regret.
You write a lot about a calm heart. How do you make that? How do you calm your heart?
Well, I think it is a process of conditioning. I mean, there's some things that we need to know, and one of the things that we talk about in this work is that we need to know about God's providence in our lives, God's provision in our lives, and God's protection in our lives as we lay our heads on our pillow.
So those things are no to be worrying about when you go to bed.
Right, but we all do it, don't we? So,
but when you when you put it out there, it gives people something to think about.
Right.
Maybe they can process it a different way.
Right, but I think just knowing those things. There was a Scottish preacher, I think, in the last generation that said, "Sleep is God's contrivance to give to man what he cannot do for himself while he's awake." And so, part of this concept of surrender is to let go. And that's so hard for me as a surgeon. I'm a control freak. I want to be in control of things. And just to be able to let go and realize that God is active and working for us as we sleep. It's really, it's amazing. We see this throughout the Scriptures, even in the beginning of creation. Genesis 1, it says, "And the evening and the morning were the first day." It's an odd way to say that. We think it's the morning and the evening. We think we start our days in the morning.
Yeah, but he started with the evening.
He started with the evening, so God was even beginning his creative work as Adam rested, and when Adam awoke, he awoke with God doing all these wonderful things for him. And so that's the way we should wake up in the morning, with knowing that God has been doing things for us even as we sleep.